So with a title such as Fireworker, I thought this was originally titled Firestarter, which got me thinking of the Prodigy song that went a little something like this.
Got a lousy haircut, a really stupid haircut. What a silly haircut, I can't believe this hair.
Yeah, a little different than what we actually have on the album.
Come closer, I'm the Lord of pseudo thinking.
Fireworker from Gazpacho. So Gazpacho is a brilliant contemporary progressive rock band hailing from Norway. These guys have put out 16 studio albums, including this one here. I really dove into their fourth studio album back in 2007 of Night. This was a full concept album all about dreams and night, and the follow-up of TikTok, in my mind, is even better. And then from there, it was a little bit of a rocky touch and go kind of thing. Now, the three albums I put out before Night are still fine. Like Bravo, When Earth Lets Go, and Firebird. They're all right. They're all fine. But again, Night is really the one that catapulted them into stardom. The albums that came after TikTok has been kind of touch and go. Massa Atropos was okay. I like the moody darkness. That continued on and I think perfected on March of Ghosts. And then Demon, I friggin' love. I really, really do love their 2014 album of Demon. Moloch and Soyuz, not a big fan of. They haven't aged as well as I hope they would. The problem, I feel, is just there's not a whole lot going on with both of those albums. I don't feel any perch. I don't feel any tangibility. So when it came to Fireworker, it was very interesting because I wasn't all that excited over it because I already had two albums that I felt didn't stand up to par for me. So the bar was set relatively low for Fireworker, in my opinion, when it finally came out. And what we're treated to is 5 longer tracks. Well, I need to caveat that a little bit. 2 longer tracks and 5 shorter pieces. And what I really like is, if I'm talking about the structure of this album, I really love how this album is in fact structured. I love how the first track of Space Cowboy is almost 20 minutes long. That really, really opens up this album extremely well. It gives us exactly the idea of what this album is. It's much more impressionistic. It's much more somber. It's very pastel as well. All of the very somber moments from Night, TikTok, and Massa Atropos are really dove in deep into this. There's not as many big, verbose powerhouses, which, again, kind of follow suit with Soyuz and Moloch, but where those moments are, because there are a few moments even within Space Cowboy that really brings out those chugging guitars and those blasting sounds that I know Gazpacho is really able to do. And this might be maybe the heaviest that they've ever done. And I'm not just talking about dark, because it is definitely on a darker tangent and a darker side of things, very similar to Demon, but in a much more guttural aspect. Like this is something that Gazpacho does really well, and something that they really started hammering home within Demon is like really looking back and doing these primitive, prehistoric soundscapes and feelings. Within this album and within Space Cowboy, we're bringing in this really full-on women's choir to really bring forth this also in Search of Zethora. Like, that's kind of the feeling that I have on that, or some of those sounds that provide this epiphany of this having this prehistoric, pre-intellectualized, I guess, life form take that next step into actual cognition, actual self-awareness. It is a little bit of a story of those leaps in evolution, those leaps in epiphany and self-awareness. I like how they're able to blend that really, really well with the musical soundscapes around them. And because of that, and because a lot of those epiphanies and those realizations take a longer stretch of time, as well as so much more self-reflection, again, the music mirrors that. So the music has this very self-reflective, very airy, very roomy kind of a style. Like, I feel like these guys are almost playing in a giant empty amphitheater with this giant choir with really no audience, providing this experimentation of sounds. And there is a moment within Space Cowboy, because of the length and because such an ebb and flow, it really reminds me of the Marillion track, The Invisible Man. And there's one point in particular where it really sounds like The Invisible Man. And I actually had to stop myself. I'm like, I know this. And I was really racking my brain until I realized this is Marillion's Invisible Man. And it works in this context, and I really like what they do with it. But I'm always aware of when these occurrences happen, because it would be foolish to think that Gazpacho doesn't follow Marillion's music, because that's essentially how they got their start. Marillion helped kind of launch their career. But yeah, that was a little, like, it was beautiful in terms of the music, but it did kind of take me out of the music a little bit. Getting back to the actual album structure, Sapien is the final track off of this at just over 15 minutes. And so we have this opening track of Space Cowboy almost in the 20-minute mark, and then Sapien being this past 15-minute mark. So their book ends with these really big and meaty tracks. The one issue, though, I have with Sapien is that there's this moment near the ending where it does provide this really brilliant and beautiful ending piece. And I for sure thought the track was over, but then it continues on and it just kind of fizzles out. And I felt like they provided this really brilliant, beautiful fade out. It isn't necessarily a like a big explosive ending. It's not a big crescendoed ending. It's a very beautiful play out ending where they're kind of finalizing the track, putting the last bits into place, and then kind of tying a bow onto it. Not necessarily putting a punctuation mark onto it, but definitely providing that bow. And then they still continue on, and it clumsily trips after that, in my mind. I just feel like the track wanders a little too long for me. Now, the music that still surrounds it is still beautiful and fantastic, and it picks up exactly where Space Cowboy left off. And then we have the sandwiched middle three tracks of Hourglass, Fireworker, the title track, and Antique. And these tracks have a little bit more punch to them, where I feel like Space Cowboy and Sapien are much more wandering the territory, seeing what works. You know, we've got the violin and mandolin player of Michael adding inflections here and there and providing a nice ambient soundscape sounds to it, with Thomas and Alexander Anderson on keyboards. Again, really providing a beautiful atmosphere. They never really take center stage all that often, especially in those two really big tracks. How much do we really need to praise Jan Henrik Ohm for his vocal works? I mean, the man is definitely challenging something very, very beautiful. And I also really need to praise Lars Erik Asp on drums and percussion. Again, he's providing such a really unique style. At no point does he ever, blast beats or take it out and just like kabam, but it really brings back, and this is something that was found within the last three albums, starting with Demon and continuing with Moloch and Soyuz, where it feels very primitive, and primitive in terms of like prehistoric, like very caveman, very like what is music kind of an idea, where it's very simplistic, but also very human in that sense. And so I really like how that's blended with all the things all around. Now, what I also want to point out is John Arne Velbo on main guitars. When he takes center stage and just blasts that guitar, this is especially found within Fireworker and Antique, he lays down such tasty sounds on his guitar. He might not be blaring away and shredding it all over the place, but like those specific notes and sounds that he's able to make with those notes are just superb, especially on this track of Fireworker and Antique. And I do like how these middle three tracks, Hourglass, Fireworker, and Antique, are much better structured tracks. Like they are more of like the singles track on this album. They provide a better grounding between those two Goliaths of those other tracks. So overall, Fireworker is, in my mind, a huge step up from Moloch and Soyuz. This is probably around the same area that, say, March of Ghosts was. I still enjoy Demon a little bit more just for how readily available it was. I feel like Fireworker is one that you really need to sit down and listen to over multiple months and almost multiple years, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, I've only had 4 full days with this album, and I still don't really feel equipped properly to talk about this album to the fullest extent that I want to. But I also know you guys are hungry and you want to know my opinion about it. So what I'm really looking forward to is putting this album on the shelf, letting it ferment, letting it age, letting it mature, and then picking it up in a couple of months, a couple of years, and really letting the music blossom. Because I know that this isn't necessarily a very immediate album. It's not an album that will grab you right off the get-go. It's one that will take its time, hopefully, and really blossom into something very special. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So where I'm sitting at right now, it's a perfect album to pick up in physical format, because it's one that really deserves to be in a collection to let sit for a little bit. You know, listen to it late at night one evening and just soak yourself in, then put it on the shelf and let a couple months go by, let the seasons change, and put it on again just to see how it melds in that sense. It's also a very fall album. So yeah. That's what I have to say about Fireworker from Gazpacho. What did you guys think? It's out now, so did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.